The orange, yeah. Mr. One second. All right, good afternoon and welcome to today's debate, the semi-finals, graded 9. Today's debate topic is, should video games be considered sports? If I'm not mistaken, it's now considered sports. But it's not about the idea that it's sports or not. It's about the idea whether it should be considered sports. So how persuasive you are in persuading the judges, the audience, and the other team of your position would matter today. On my right side, there's 9 orange that argues that video games should be considered sports. On my left side, there's 9 brown who argues that video games should not be considered sports. We're going to start, of course, with the round with the affirmative team, with the opening statement. Please go ahead. Affirmative team, 9 orange.
Testing. Today we live in the 21st century, a century of technological advancements. And with these technological advancements, the way of thinking has changed, where tasks that would usually be time-consuming can be finished in a matter of milliseconds. Today, we are here to debate on whether or not video games should be considered a sport. My colleagues and I believe that video games should be considered a sport. Why? Since it is the technological advancement of an ancient mindset. Whenever you hear the term sport, you would instantly think of a traditional sport such as football or basketball. But did you know the origins of football all started in the Han Dynasty, which was more than 2,000 years ago? Video games is a sport that has only recently begun to settle its roots. But before we get into any details about why we are correct, I would like to remind everyone here the proper terminology of a sport. A sport, and I quote from the Oxford Dictionary, is an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against one another for entertainment. Usually, a sport is played by athletes in good physical condition. Notice that it says skill, which is an important aspect of video games, and it is one reason why we believe that video games should be considered a sport. It also says physical exertion, which is actually required when playing video games. Video games is also traditional to any other traditional sport. And it is not my opinion, no. It is not our opinion, no. It is an opinion of a professional basketball player. I don't share this ideal alone. We don't share this ideal alone, no. Millions and billions of people from around the world share our ideals that video games should be considered a sport now and always. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The affirmative team, the negative team, please, opening statement.
What are sports? A sport is an athletic activity requiring skill or physical exertion powers, while on the other hand, video games is a game played by electronically manipulating images produced by a computer program on a monitor or other display. In today's debate, with the assistance of my companions, we will show you why video games in general should not be considered a sport. Our opposing team believe that it should, but considered a sport, but we believe for several reasons. Some of the main reasons that it should not be a sport, some of the main reasons sports were made in the first place is to help a person get fit, for instance. Losing weight, while video games did the complete opposite of that. They help people just sit down on a couch and play all day. In some cases, people don't go outside for long periods of days. Console game-related health problems can include repetitive strain injuries, skin disorders, or other health issues. Other problems include video game provoked seizures in patients with epilepsy. In rare and extreme cases, death has been there because of playing a lot of video games. Something else that has not been affected by sports is eyesight, while it's been affected by video games. Because the player focuses a lot during the game with his eyesight. This can lead to the same issue caused by long-term television watching, including headaches, blurred vision, and even nearsightedness if frequent breaks aren't taken too. Relax your eyes. So in general, video games are doing the exact opposite of what sports are supposed to do. Therefore, video games should not be considered a sport in any way.
Okay, thanks a lot for the opening statement. The affirmative team, please go ahead with the main arguments.
One of the most important concepts that make a sport is skill and strategy. Whatever your game is, physical or mental, you have to work hard to reach the top of it. Like any other athletic endeavor, video games requires tremendous skill and strategy. It can be played individually or on a team. And serious electronic sport athletes train for months on end, displaying strong mental focus, quick reaction time, and extreme dedication as they compete, which makes video games so similar to sports. Don't believe me? Watch a major gaming tournament. Not only will you witness undeniable talent and effort, but you'll also see proof that electronic sports or video games have a huge dedicated fan base. In fact, these competitions often attract more viewers than traditional sports.
There are a lot of similarities between traditional sports and video games. Michael Blitters, a manager in the video game industry with a background in linguistics, journalism, and sports, passionately believes that esports are indeed a true sport. He also says that judo and esports are not that dissimilar. There are tournaments you have to climb up a ladder to eventually compete with the best. And in terms of training, you have to put in the same amount of hours or even more. The average training time of a football player is 5 to 7 hours a day, while the average for a gamer is 8 to 12 hours a day. You study strategy, technique, and skill. All the elements are there. The fact that most dictionary definitions of sports include the words physical or athletic hasn't prevented darts, snookers, or chess from being under the sporting category. Jeremy Lin, a professional NBA basketball player and an esports enthusiast, says that basketball and Dota 2, a video game, aren't that different. It's a 5-on-5 game, and there are 5 different positions in both cases. You can tell the higher level you go, it's all about teamwork. It's all about players doing their roles and jobs.
The struggle of the video game industry to try to convince the Olympics that video games should be inducted in the quad-annual tournament was finally ended when the Rio 2016 Olympics officially recognized video games, mainly League of Legends and Counter-Strike Go, as a sport on January 28, 2015, and decided that it will be included in the 2020 Olympics. This was organized by the Korean Esports Association, otherwise known as KESPA.
Injuries and physical exertion. Exergaming is a term used for video games that are also a form of exercise. Exergaming relies on technology that tracks body movement or reaction. The game has been credited with upending the stereotype of gaming as sedentary activity and promoting an active lifestyle. Research indicates that exergames can produce real improvements in fitness. Exergames are seen as evolving from technology changes aimed at making video games more fun. To accomplish the goals of exergaming, normal video gaming companies started producing more devices that support this idea. For example, Nintendo Wii, Xbox Kinect, and PlayStation Move. All these devices have instructions on how to use them so that you won't injure yourself. The same applies to normal sports. You can't just do any bad moves in sports and then you injure yourself. There are proper ways for playing each sport so you can avoid severe injuries. Hai Lam, which is a cyber athlete, got a severe injury in his wrist, which caused him to actually retire from esports and video games in general. Such an injury actually causes professional tennis players and golfers to retire too. Dr. Holly Rayner, director of the University of Tennessee's Healthy Eating and Activity Lab in the US, said that exit games prove to be a better source of physical health than normal sports. Doesn't this mean that it includes physical activities?
Today, the United States recognizes professional gamers as athletes by giving them athlete visas, which is primarily given to the athletes by the highest caliber. This act by the US government was organized by Riot Games esports manager Nick Allen, who quotes, "This was a constant back and forth of show us more proof. Is this realistic? And that sort of thing. Eventually, it got to the point where they were like, we have no reason to say no. Okay, this is legitimate." This is what he had to say on the matter. Thus, we can now call professional gamers as cyber athletes.
Virtual reality. Virtual reality, also known as immersive multimedia or computer simulated reality, is a technological advancement replicating an environment, real or imagined. And it can also simulate a user's physical presence and environment in a way that allows the user to interact with it. Virtual reality creates experience which can include sight, touch, hearing, and even smell. Video games have evolved more into virtual reality. Virtual reality, virtual reality requires much more skill and strategy, and much more mental and physical exertion.
Those are our main arguments.
Thanks a lot for the affirmative team. The negative team, your main arguments, please.
Calling gaming a sport is truly ridiculous. Skills or strategies are a minor part of the sport, but the major one is about the physical exertion. Let's refer to the meaning of the sport from the dictionary. According to dictionary.com, which is a reliable source, says that sport is an athletic activity requiring a skill and physical activity. I think that playing video games does not require any physical exertion. It's true that gaming involves the highest levels of competition and strategy, but those factors can't outweigh the main aspect that is missing, which is the physical exertion.
People do not need to run across 50 yards or dribble a ball to play a video game. To be a gamer, all you need to know is how a controller works. In order to be an athlete, you need to be in top physical shape and have some type of athletic ability. Anyone can learn how to play video games, no matter what age or physical capability he has. Yes, video games are popular in this modern day, but does that mean it deserves to be called a sport? A guy who does nothing but eat and play video games all day at home is not as someone that would be considered a sports role model is unfathomable. That's not exactly a profession that parents would encourage their kids to get into. Just because it has the word game, and it doesn't mean it should be considered as a sport. Another negative effect of video games is on the human brain that is not found in sports. A small study has found that people who play video games on a regular basis may undergo brain changes associated with neurological and psychiatric disorders. If this linkage holds up with security, it could mean that gamers are putting their minds at risk.
Don't get me wrong, who doesn't love playing a good video game? But calling gaming a sport is a bit ridiculous. It's missing physical exercise, which is one of the major elements that sets athletics apart from other competitive hobbies. What's next, calling social media a sport? The definition of a sport is an activity involving physical exertion and the skill in which an individual or team competes against others for entertainment. The definition of a video game is a game played by electronically manipulating images produced by a computer program on a display. I don't see the word physical exertion or active in the definition of a video game. People think that a video game can be called a sport. Wow, about 20 years back when you go outside, that was called a sport. I believe that video gaming is a hobby, not a sport. When you guys are talking about video games being a sport, you're talking about all video games in general. So you're saying playing adult-rated games are beneficial and healthy for us? We are not only talking about active games that you play standing up and jumping around. We are talking about all the games in general. Remember, if you're saying FIFA is a great sport for us, then you're saying staying at home playing virtual games on the console are better for us than to go outside and play a real sport. If you think video games are competitive, then that means any other competition can be competitive, such as debating. Isn't that competitive? Is it considered a sport? Anything can be competitive. You also exercise your mind in playing video games. And well, don't you exercise your mind in a debate or in other competitions? Yoga is an amazing sport, but you know what? It isn't competitive at all. This is not to humiliate the gamers, but rather to say the word sport should be reserved for an active games which can be played without a screen. To play a sport, you need athletic skills such as endurance, speed, strength, and persistence. Playing video games consists of sitting down in front of a screen and often killing a bunch of brain cells. Anyone can learn how to be good at a game, but it's harder to learn how to kick a soccer ball or how to throw a basketball. Video games are anything but a sport. I can't think of any inspiring person who plays esports. Esports consists of playing against other people by pressing buttons and hitting them. By making video games a sport, you are instantly promoting people for playing video games. If you're calling esport or sport, you're also calling online games a sport. Esport means playing against each other online. There is no real difference. Esport is just a name, neither a physical sport nor a real sport.
Something else that's negative about sports, video games, is violence. The effect of video games violence in kids is worsened by the game's interactive nature. In many games, kids are rewarded for being more violent. The effect of violence is done repeatedly. The child is in control of violence and experiences the violence in his own eyes. For example, killing, kicking, stabbing, and shooting. This active participation, repetition, and rewarded are effective tools for learning behavior. Indeed, many studies seem
Thanks a lot for the negative team. Both teams have brought forward very compelling arguments. Now I'm going to move on to the positive team. And I need you to start with the round in terms of cross-examination, any rebuttals, or any new arguments you want to lay forward. Okay?
You talked about how video games should not be considered a sport because it's always just sitting. Why is chess considered a sport then?
Hai Lam, a cyber athlete, got injured by repetitive clicking. His injuries were so severe that they were similar to those of golfers and tennis players. Tell me, how can Mr. Lam get injured without any physical exertion whatsoever? You also mentioned the negative effects of playing video games. Well, in football, you also get negative effects. You get injured a lot.
You said that most of video gamers have weak eyesight. But it has been proven that 80% of the gamers have better eyesight and can differentiate between colors much better than normal people. And 80% too of the people who are gamers have thin bodies, not fat ones.
You mentioned something about the debate. Debate, you mentioned as it is a competition. Well, sports is meant for entertainment, not a competition.
You also mentioned throwing a football. Well, throwing a football is actually a skill and not a sport. Also, I'll give you a statistic right now. On debate.org, 66% said that esports or video games should be considered a sport, while 34% disagreed.
You mentioned that kids playing gun games and adult games such as things, but like all games have a certain age, and kids don't just go and buy some 18 plus game or gun game that can destroy their minds. Kids have certain games they should play, and adults have certain games that they should play.
We're done with the questions on rebuttal.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any new arguments to put forward?
In 2014, Robert Morris University in Chicago became the first U.S. college to make video gaming a varsity sport, even offering scholarship prizes to the top athletes. Yeah, okay, we're done now.
All right, thank you. Negative team, please.
The point you said about the chess. Chess has nothing to do with physical exertion. And we said the definition of a sport, it contains the word exertion. There is no physical exertion in chess.
Physical activity makes your body strong, healthy, and in a good condition. So how do you think that staring at a screen or even playing chess for long periods may make your body healthy or even in a good condition?
The Wii and Kinect are virtual sports. They do not exercise all physical factors of the body. They lack on making the body and mind very active in physical activity. Therefore, the Wii and Kinect are just sitting with the controller and are virtual. Your side of the argument says video games should be considered a sport. Well, now you just said that it's for entertainment.
If you think of video game as a sport, why don't the school add it to the physical education periods?
You mentioned at the beginning that sport is an activity that requires physical exertion and skill. Even if it requires skill, this doesn't mean it should be considered as a sport.
If you consider video games a sport, then why isn't there any physical activity in the whole body?
The debate.org thing that you mentioned earlier, the survey, it's the same people that went on the website are the same people that play video games. So they use technology to use the website so they can vote. They're literally the same people that play video games. It's not that big of a difference between all people in the world that choose sports over video games. That's my point.
We're done.
Okay, thanks for that. Do you have any arguments? Any new arguments to put forward?
I've conducted a survey based on 2 questions. The first question is, do you think video games are sport? I got more than 50 responses, and 91% said that it shouldn't be considered as a sport because it has nothing to do with physical exertion, and 9% said it should be considered a sport. It's their opinion, point of view. And the second question says, Do you think that esports are considered sports? 77.3% said no, and 22.7% said yes. I think that esports shouldn't be considered as a type of sport.
And to mention a note, this survey included some parents, adults, and teenagers, not only teenagers that play video games.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot. You have the chance now to reply if you have any reply. If not, you can go to the closing statement.
Chess has been proven as a sport universally, and you said that it doesn't have physical exertion, but it has been proven for some reason, and it has been proven that exer games, which such as Connect and Wii U or Wii, lead to better and more healthy bodies. Football doesn't have better physical activities other than legs. It doesn't help you in anything other than legs. Not all sports help in all the body. They help in one part, exact part. And debate.org conducted a survey to millions of people, not only 50 people. And the 66% answered yes, as we said.
You mentioned that debate.org is not a reliable website. Then how is your own survey reliable? Even though if you put parents around it or whatever, it doesn't make it reliable. And the sports doesn't mean just physical exertion. It has to be also with skill and strategy and a lot of thinking through it. So chess has the slightest of physical exertion, but it's still considered a sport because of the amount of skill and strategy it involves. ESPN, otherwise known as Entertainment and Sport Programming Network, has also started to broadcast video game tournaments. So entertainment is in the definition of a sport and sport. So yeah, that's why we kind of believe that it is. Plus, the Olympics has also started to recognize it as a sport. Now, you're telling me you can't trust the Olympics?
About chess, actually, video games include more physical exertion than chess, and chess has been proven to be a sport, but video games have not yet been.
Okay. Shall we move on to the closing statement, please?
Before I begin with my closing statement, I would like to remind everyone of the proper terminology of a sport. A sport, and I quote, is an activity involving physical exertion, skill, in which an individual or team competes against another for entertainment. Usually, a sport is played by athletes in good physical condition. I believe that this debate has revolved around the question that isn't it time for video games to be considered as an official sport? Well, the popularity of video games has risen so much that it has begun to overshadow traditional sports. Last year, League of Legends held the World Championship, and it peaked around 27 million viewers. The NBA Finals, however, only managed to get 15.5 viewers. But that was a year ago. Video games will evolve and will grow, and soon it will be universally considered as a sport. Jousting used to be a sport, but it is no longer considered as one. We believe that video games should be considered a sport. Why? Since it's the evolution of an ancient mindset. Why? Since video games are now considered a sport by the Olympics. Why? Since there's a lot of skill and physical exertion in video games. Why? Since video games are the future of sports. Just like in the Han Dynasty, when football began to gain momentum, video games will soon be universally seen as a sport. Just like how basketball was introduced by Dr. James Naismith, video games will soon begin to change the way of thought. I don't share this ideal alone. We don't share this ideal alone. No, millions and billions of people from around the world share our ideals that video games should be considered as a sport now and forever. Honestly, before I end, I want to ask you this question. What is the difference between MOBAs and basketball? What is the difference between fighters and judo? What is the difference between football and first person shooters? They're both competitive and they're both team based. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the closing statement. The positive team, negative team, please. The closing statement.
So chess is a sport because it's real, not virtual like video games. Football helps the respiratory system and breathing and gets people in great physical shape. You're only saying video games exercise the mind. That is one small factor of the whole physical exertion.
I didn't think that you mentioned any reliable source that says that chess or even Connect as a sport. And for the second time, I'm saying that skills without physical exertion cannot form a sport. And about the football and the first-person shooter, they're common in two things that you said, but they're not common. In first-person shooter doesn't require any physical exertion, while football does. I think so.
You mentioned a point before that audience of tournaments of video games is more is the number of them amount of them is more than the audience of NBA. But you compared with NBA is not what do you call it? Is not spread in the world like football. If you compare it with football, like example World Cup matches, it's uncomparable.
And referring to what you said, I didn't mention anything against debate.org. I didn't say they're not reliable. I just mentioned that the people that voted are the same people that play video games the whole time, not trustable people. I didn't say anything against the website. That's it.
All right, let's go ahead to the closing statement, please.
So overall, why would we want these acts of violence and illnesses to affect our children, rather than allowing them to go outside and enjoying their time with their friends and having fun with sports? So all in all, we should not consider video games as a sport. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Just allow us 2 minutes to calculate the scores, please. It's gonna be All right, the results are out. Yeah, both teams did a very, very great job. Both of you argued very well on your side. One of the teams got a 51.5, the other got a 45.5. Orange, you got 51.5 on this debate. Congratulations, 9 Orange. You go to the finals.